As a mom, you may have some questions or concerns about what exactly your kids are getting into online, especially if you let them use platforms like YouTube or Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Even a lot of the video games allow kids to talk to each other on these platforms, and you can wonder, like, what are my kids getting into? If they're getting into things, would I even know? Are they talking to people, or other people talking to them that shouldn't be? Like, what are all of these dangers out there? If that resonates with you, then you're going to love today's conversation. In it, I'm talking with Chris McKenna, author of the brand new book, 5 Habits of the Tech-Ready Family, and CEO of Protect Young Eyes. He's sharing some really interesting information about things these social media companies are up to that we as moms may not realize. I know it was really eye-opening to me to hear, oh, they're doing that? Yeah, of course they are. So definitely this is a conversation you want to listen into so that you can be informed, but then also to get some of that practical advice that I love providing. So, okay, how do we navigate these things well? When we have kids who say, hey, everybody's on social media, all of my friends are on there, all of my friends are playing video games, I want to do these too. How can we help our kids have that good childhood while also keeping them safe? So if you are thinking, yeah, I need to help figuring out how to deal with this as well, today's conversation is for you. Chris, I am so excited to be able to talk with you today. This I know is going to be such a good conversation that moms really need to know about. And I want to start by just mentioning some of the incredible things that you have been doing. Not only did you do a lot of work with Protect Young Eyes and building that up, you've been instrumental with passing legislature and you've won awards for your work. Obviously, this is not just a little part-time side project, but you are all in on helping protect young eyes. Will you tell us some of why this work is so important to you?
Well, I never expected to be doing it, Brittany. How many of us are on a path that we never expected to be on? I'm supposed to be a CFO at some business because I'm an accountant. And so how does that translate into what I'm doing today? Well, after a career in business, I was called into ministry and I led a large junior high ministry here in West Michigan, where I'm from. And the years that I did that are critical. That was like from 2009 to 2016. So I watched us as humans. I watched us give the internet to little humans. And that was a problem. There was something very unsettling about that to me. There's a lot of other history behind that. I'm an adult who, as a child, was exposed to pornography very early on. That led to an unhealthy relationship with technology, almost destroyed me and our marriage, and yet got free from that and then watched us through technology put that monster back in children's pockets. So I had this experience. I had this business background of wanting to solve problems. That's what I was trained to do as a consultant. And so I watched parents introducing all of this unnecessary risk into the lives of kids. And they weren't doing it because they were bad. They simply didn't know. So Protect Young Eyes was a website, an idea to equip my families at my church that then grew into a team. And just 2 years ago, I know people may be listening to this or watching this at various points in the future, but it was in 2024 that I decided to do this full time and jump into this. And before that, it was this sort of passion idea, side hustle that God was growing. And more, as you said, awesome moms like you, you're often the ones on the front lines protecting. I call you the CTO moms, the Chief Technology Officer moms, who are often the ones in charge of all the blocking and tackling when it comes to technology at home, trying to do their best in a world that is so desperately trying to capture the hearts and minds of our kids. And there you are, moms, at the front lines saying, no way, not my child, but in a digital world that is constantly changing and is constantly coming after them. That's tough. We want to come alongside. So never expected to be doing any of this, but now here I am helping moms literally all over the world try to get this right.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to touch on something really important that you said is that I don't remember exactly the words that you used, but it's coming after our children. So I think that so often as moms, we have some idea of, okay, like I am the mom. It is my job to say, you can only watch so much of this. But so often, like, especially for me, I'm like, okay, the first thing I'm thinking is how much screen time should you be having? You probably shouldn't be on it all day. Like, even if you like don't have chores to do, your room's clean, you probably shouldn't be on it for like hours and hours. So that's kind of the first place that my mind goes. But I know that there's obviously a lot more danger online than just simply how much time our kids are watching YouTube. You mentioned, though, how it's coming after our kids. Can you kind of share some of the reality that you've seen? What are our kids being exposed to today that may be different than what we grew up with? I was of the generation, like, I didn't have the internet as a young child. Like, it wasn't a thing
Right.
yet. And then as I got older, I mean, there were still issues. I'm sure I got into plenty of things that I shouldn't have been, but at least I was old enough to kind of have that foundation to know in a way that our like 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, they don't have that today. So can you kind of talk to like, how is it different than it was? And what do you mean by it's coming after them?
Yeah, no, it has certainly evolved. And so technology, like you, my experience was technology was something you went and did. You had to go to a place, whether it was a computer lab, you had to go to a computer that was in your home in a public place. You had to dial up and go get it to do the things you wanted it to do. It served very specific purposes that really couldn't be served anywhere else. I couldn't play Oregon Trail anywhere else. I couldn't send a message to my friends other than maybe calling them or writing them a letter like this instantaneous way through AOL. And there was things that computers did that were very specific to computers, but then there was also real life, in-person, analog, other things that can only be done that way. So there was this divide, this separation between this digital thing, not fully digital even, but this computerized thing, and my real life that was still over here. The difference is those things have now become entwined. And when I say coming after, I truly mean designed to get children. Right now, in the middle of us having this conversation, there is a court proceeding happening right now over in Los Angeles, the first of its kind, where social media executives are being called to the stand. We actually got to the point where they've been told to come to the stand and testify. And we're seeing the evidence that the goals of these technology organizations is to capture the hearts and minds of kids. Why? Because that turns them into lifelong customers. There is a value that they've attached to every young human. It's like $237 or something is the value that they go after because they know they can multiply that they've looked at the ages to 13 to 17 as, in the quote words of Sarah Wynne Williams, who testified in the Senate, used to work for Mark Zuckerberg, they consider 13 to 17-year-olds a highly valuable and highly vulnerable audience. They carry those two attributes where they're actually designing signals within Instagram to tell people in the company when a 13-year-old girl would delete a selfie, they would sell that information to advertisers. So in the moments after she deleted a selfie, they could serve her a beauty product advertisement. That is not the same as a game that I went and played with a floppy disk or a CD that I put into a computer that was fun. That is an intentional design in order to capture my feelings of diminished self-worth, to take advantage of my vulnerability as a teenage girl, to want to be prettier, to want to be better, to want to measure up. Questions that all of us ask as humans as we long for a relationship with our Savior who can fill that. But in the absence of that, here comes an algorithm that's going to do its best to replace and to answer that question. That's what I mean by coming after the hearts and minds of our children. This is intentional, this is designed, and we should never take it for granted.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you shared that example because that makes so much sense. Like, obviously, companies, any of the companies, social media companies and other companies, obviously, like, their business model is to get people to use their platform as long as possible. That's how they work. That's kind of the nature of business. I mean, I'm not anti-business by any means. I run a business, as do you. Because that's kind of the nature of business. You want people to use your product and you want them to use it as much as possible. But there has to be some kind of boundary, which I think is what people are fighting over, and it's going to be really hard to define. Like, how do you grow your business, but also be responsible for young lives, especially when you are intentionally targeting children who don't know? Like, I use Facebook and all the social medias all the time, and I wouldn't have even thought of the example of, oh, when you delete that, but I'm like, oh, of course they have that data. Of course they're doing that. I wouldn't even think.
Of course they know.
Can you give some more examples of things that you've seen that they're doing, just so that moms can be aware? Because so often we don't even think about, like, because we're not all marketers. We don't know all the things that are going on behind the scenes.
That's right. You could look at any of the features that are popular. all the things that we enjoy about social media are designed in a very neurologically intentional way. So a big part of our presentations that we do, we have a couple of different versions that we do, Brittany, but we spend quite a bit of time educating parents on the 3 different functional areas of the brain. The part that keeps us alive, that deep reptilian, the parts of emotional, where we have our reward center and everything we feel related to stress and anxiety and those sorts of things. That's our limbic system. And then we have the thinking part of our brain, the front part of the brain that develops last, where we have logic and reason. The part that is really driving the bus when it comes to tweens and teens is that middle emotional part of the brain that is exploding with neurological activity, really causing this deep longing for them to connect to others like them. Why? Because that middle part of the brain asks the question of, am I loved and am I significant? We all feel it, right? Every country, culture that has teenagers, they have a brain that asks that question. You maybe remember those days, as I do too. You wanted nothing to do with your dorky parents because you wanted to connect with others like you. That was as strong a feeling as anything that you had as a teenager. So I haven't actually answered your question yet because I think the setup is really important. When you think about the unique developmental place that our young people are at from ages like 8 to 18, and if you constantly remember as a parent that they are longing to connect, longing to be with other friends, longing to feel significant, longing for an answer to the question of, am I loved? And then we put them inside of applications that have a like. Every like becomes digital currency to answer the question of, am I loved? Every viral video becomes digital currency to answer the question of, am I loved? Everything that gets noticed by others in digital spaces, when I'm looking at other people's pictures and they look better than me, that is a detriment to my question of, am I loved? Because now I don't quite feel as loved or feel as pretty as somebody else who got a lot more attention as more than I did. Everything that makes social media, the comparison, the heart on Instagram, the thumbs up and the kind of the like, be it on TikTok or on Facebook. Not a lot of kids use Facebook, but we as adults even feel that, right? To call that out even as moms and as dads, that feeling when someone's on spring break and showing the pictures that you wish you could be at. These are all very intentionally designed to tap into that desire to want to feel significant. And if when we're teenagers, we feel that deeper, right? This is why the world is fine at 7 a.m. for a teenager and not at 7:02. Now you know why. It's that middle part of the brain that is so active and exploding with activity. So when I talk about design, these are the things that are important for parents to understand. And I'll end with this, at least for this section. It's not that our kids want social media. They want to be where their friends are, Brittany. And if all of their friends are on social media, of course that's what they want, which then circles back to us as parents to try to create spaces other than Snapchat, spaces other than Instagram where friends are hanging out, just so they can satisfy that longing in a healthier way.
Yeah, I love that you just explained that so well, because as you're explaining all of this, I'm thinking like, yeah, I want these things too. Like I look at Instagram and like, I want to know, like, am I doing a good job? You know, all these things.
That's right.
But, you know, I am an adult and I have a greater understanding. I mean, I don't think any of us like fully understand how much things are filtered or, you know, curated. Like we know it, but we only kind of know it. But like I'm an adult, like I am married. I have somebody who has pledged the rest of their life to me. I have 4 children who love me. Like I have a career and I have all of these things going for me. And even still, when I get on Instagram, I'm like, okay, well, okay, you know, and like it makes me feel a certain way depending on how, you know, what is showing up in my feed. So I am very intentional. Like I'm very careful about who I am following and who I'm not following. And I know to do that.
That's good.
I'm an adult.
That's good.
But we're handing those things to our children and our teenagers who don't necessarily know all of these things. And so I can see how that is just going to be so dangerous. So my question for you though, I love how you brought up, because that is exactly what I was going to ask you to talk about next, is our kids want to be where their friends are. So how can we navigate our kids having a phone, not having a phone, having social media, not having social media? Because that's the issue that I ran into. I was like, hey, I know that there are so many dangers. I don't want you to like have this until you're ready. I know I'm not a cool mom and that's fine, but you're going to wait. But
we don't live in a world anymore where we can just say, okay, go just play outside. There's not other kids outside, or like, go do this. Like, they're not there. So my children, in very kind, loving way, were like, I mean, this is how we talk to our friends, either through video games, that may or may not be questionable, but they're playing with their friends, or through social media. It's like, that's where they can go to have those times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. There's parents listening, moms that are going to be watching this that fall into different categories, right? So I, like you, am a parent. Andrea and I have been married 26, almost 27 years, 4 children. I have a daughter in college, and then I have 3 teen boys who are 14, 16, and 16 right now. So I have an 8th, 9th, and 10th grader. So I'm right there stumbling and bumbling through the digital age, like many of us probably right now. And so there's a lot of nuance to this. So I'll offer that and say there aren't silver bullets. We've come up with some real practical things that we promote, some frameworks, because that CPA brain of mine loves things in rows and columns and spreadsheets. And that's, what my upcoming book and everything is about. We want to make as many sort of real practical ideas and put them out there as much as possible. But here's what I would say to a parent who's in a situation like you described. Much of what you just described is actually on us. What do I mean by that is it's on us to reach out to know the parents of the kids that our kids are hanging out with. Because every yes to a digital space also is a yes to increased risk in the lives of our children. I'm not saying you can't say yes to social media. I'm not saying you can't say yes to video games. I'm actually okay with some video games. But every yes brings with it a yes to some very intentional things that we have to do as parents, because that goes back to that business mindset that I was brought up with. It's, if you're going to increase business risk, you have to increase the controls and the procedures to bring it down. Same is true in parenting. If I'm going to say yes to Roblox, which I don't want any parent to do, by the way, if I'm going to say yes to Fortnite, if I'm going to say yes to Snapchat, then that means I have to say yes to doing a lot of other things to offset that risk that I've introduced in their lives. And so one of the things that we talk about in our conversations with parents, I just did this last week with a big group, is if you're going to say yes, then you're also saying yes to being ridiculous. Ridiculously informed, ridiculously engaged, ridiculously direct conversations, ridiculously frequent conversations. You will pick up their phone and look at it. You will ask them questions. You're going to say things to them so often that they're a little bit annoyed and rolling their eyes and finishing your sentences. You're going to read education on the things they're using. You're going to have the same apps that they do so that you understand them too. Like, these are our yes to them really is a challenge for us to say yes to what we need now to do. It's easy to say yes to them. But I want to make sure that we understand that the harder thing, which is actually more important, is, are we willing to say yes to what our part needs to be in this equation? Because it needs to happen on both sides. So that's how I would answer that. And we have more details, in our various education that we do around what does that mean? What are the tools that parents can use? What do some of those conversations look like? How do parents have them, et cetera, et cetera? That's the implementation of those things. But first, you got to buy into, this is my job. And I'll say something that I sometimes say at the risk of being just not offensive, but direct, loving and direct, is that if we are going to be parents in whatever year we're in right now, okay, whenever you happen to be listening to this, if we are going to be parents right now in the digital age, this is just part of the gig. There's no passive parenting in the digital age without radically increasing the risk of harm for my child. Because as you said, to just send a child outside without any parameters around what to do if a kid tries to show them something, because it's not just going outside anymore. It's going outside, and if they play with a friend, does their friend have an iPhone? Does their friend have what I would consider a digital swimming pool in their pocket that they could fall into? Just like we used to be careful with pools when I was a kid. Have we had conversations with the family of that kid too? Like, that's what we also now have to say yes to. And that's just part of parenting today. That's just part of the gig.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because even if you are not letting your kids have phones, if you are letting them hang out with other kids, and maybe they're going to a sleepover or a get together, a play date kind of thing, and you don't know what the other family is doing. Not that you need to police every minute of every day. I mean, I don't want us to get so concerned that we just become like these fearful people who are like, I want to have so much control. Like, don't ever leave this bubble wrap. I mean, because we have to have some kind of healthy balance that's not based in fear. Like, let's be informed and make wise decisions.
Yes.
But we do have to realize, I think that the risks are a lot more than any of us realize, having it not grown up with it ourselves, and just the different age that people are getting exposed to it to now that they weren't before. So that is a good introduction into what I want to ask you next is your book, The 5 Habits of a is it tech-wise family or tech-ready family?
Tech-ready family.
Tech-ready family. I knew it was one of those. Okay, so your book, Habits for Families. What can we do? Can you walk us through some of these habits that we can do as moms, as families, so that we're not just throwing our kids into the deep end and saying good luck, but okay, here's what we're going to do to kind of help set them up for success?
Yeah, and this is where you're going to have to deal with my CPA brain, right? So we came up with a framework that we had. Good, you're here for it, I hope. And we want, because something big like the internet just feels so subjective and so overwhelming when you just say, now protect your kids from it. So this is a framework that we have used with families literally all over the world. Like, I'm fresh back from 4 days ago, I was in El Salvador. We've used this framework all over the world to help families do very practical things when it comes to their kids online. So these are the 5 habits that we're looking for. Number 1, we want to model the right behaviors. Model the right behaviors. So Brittany, it starts with us. Do we want our children to use their technology just like we do? Where we use it, how we use it, how long we use it, and what we use it for. Now, I understand that as parents, we have to use our technology a little bit more because we're adults and we have different rules. But we unpack a lot of that in the book about being more mindful. What does it look like as a parent to be content doing nothing more often than we do right now? Our kids need to see this modeled, and there's research behind that from international organizations, from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Our modeling really matters. So number 1, model the right behaviors. 2, we pursue authentic connection. In a digital world that more than ever, we haven't even talked about AI yet. If we thought social media was coming after the attention of our children, AI is coming after the affection of our children. It wants to connect to our children in deep, significant, very human-like ways. Therefore, we must pursue authentic human-to-human connection with our children. And we have very specific ways that we walk parents how to do that. Again, it starts with us. These first 2 have very little to do with how our kids use technology. It starts first with us creating this relational foundation for our children. The third is to encourage work and play. Our kids need to feel a significant part of the home by being part of the rhythms of work and play in the home, having regular jobs within the home, but also having regular opportunities to move and to play, especially as younger children. It doesn't go away as older, but it really starts young. It breaks my heart when I talk to elementary school teachers, Brittany, that some tell me that whether it's pre-K or kindergarten, that some children cannot color for long periods of time because they haven't spent enough time developing the muscles in their hands coloring at home because they've spent so much time scrolling on an iPad. We need our kids to work and to play and to be outside and falling out of trees and skinning their knees and stubbing their toes again, physically interacting with the world. Whether you're a mammal that's a bear or a boy, you all become a better version of yourself. If you have a child, you stumble and bumble through childhood. We're meant to do that to become a more resilient adult. Number 4 is we avoid addictive technologies. Not all, but addictive technologies. And we walk through what the differences are when we're looking at certain video games and some of their attributes, certain social media. And this is where we say delay is the way. That's a hashtag that we've been using for years. Not an anti-tech approach, not a no-tech policy, but a slow tech policy, right? In our home, little bits when they're ready, right tech at the right time. And then finally, after we delay addictive technologies, we diligently prevent harm with the technologies that we've said yes to. And this is where we wrap our children in layers of protection, different hardware and software for the things that we've said yes to, so they know how to navigate technology in good, positive, God-honoring ways. So when these 5 habits are in play, consistently and persistently in our homes, we have heard repeatedly back from parents over and over again that it tends to produce a family, not 100%, there's no silver bullets, but again, it decreases the risk of harm and it increases the probability that you will have a child that learns how to use technology in a God-honoring way.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to take these steps proactively as parents, because if we go the other route and we're just like, nope, technology is bad, you're not having it. When they hit 18 and they go out on their own, they have got no protection. They're just going to run for the hills because they haven't learned in your home, okay, here is how we think about things. Here is how we use things. Here's what we look at. So that's really where I'm at in my parenting right now, is a lot of, because I have kids that are at that tween teenage, like, okay, like we're going to start introducing these, but it's not a free for all. Like we're going to talk about the risks. We're going to talk about, I'm going to tell you very explicitly, we don't do these things. We do these things. And then here's how to think about these things that are kind of gray areas. So we're doing a lot of that in our house right now too. But as we wrap up today, if you could say one thing to all of the moms listening, you're like, if you get nothing else from this conversation, I want you to know this, what would that be?
That you are capable. You're enough for this, moms. You are the ones who are best equipped to do this. I desperately want more dads that are come alongside, but maybe you've got that, but you can. And I see it all over the world. Amazing moms who are doing everything they can to protect their kids. So just take one thing. I have shared things that can feel a little bit like drinking out of a fire hose, maybe too much. But in the next week, just pick one conversation. You can do that. Pick one article. You can read that and gain strength from that. But I do want, and I speak to enough moms to know that there is so much pressure and guilt that sometimes comes from feeling like my kid got too much screen time. I'm a horrible parent. Let me tell you this, moms. If your rule in the house was that my child gets 30 minutes of screen time a day and they, quote, get 35 one day, you're still an amazing mom. There's nothing that says your child is irreparably harmed because they got 5 more minutes of screen time today. If you need to give your child a device to watch a show so that you can take a shower and feel good about yourselves, do it. Your confidence, your calm, and your presence as a mom is more important than whether they got 30 or 35 minutes of screen time today. So I want you moms to hear that we need you, but we need you in that strength that you have and not doubt and get caught up in all the rules. And if I don't get it exactly right, they're going to be hooked to something that's not true. That's not true. So I guess that wasn't a deep tech tip. It wasn't do this with your router or do this with Snapchat. All that stuff's on our website, and that's almost the easy side of this. But I want you to believe that you can do this because I think you can.
Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. And I'm sure all the moms are like, okay, we got some research to do. So,
Yeah. My pleasure.
All right, how much did you love that conversation with Chris? I thought it was just so interesting and so fascinating with all of those facts and statistics and numbers that I had never really thought of before. Even though I am on social way too often, I have children who are on YouTube and social media. Just knowing some of the things that happen behind the scenes, I think that we as parents aren't always aware, but we need to be. I love how he talked about being ridiculously informed. So next steps. I don't want this to be a fear-mongering conversation where we say, hey, like we're going to wrap our kids in bubble wrap as much as we want to sometimes. Instead, we really need to take the steps to protect them, but also that includes taking the steps to train them and to teach them as well. So as a mama, your next steps really are to first educate yourself. You're already starting to do that by listening to this podcast. Seeing what's going on in the news. There's a lot of mentions in the news right now of things that are going on with social media. So finding out like what is happening, what apps are your kids on, what video games are they playing, what settings are in place that should or shouldn't be in place. Like maybe there's things you need to adjust there. Who are they talking to? How are they talking? And having those conversations to get ridiculously informed. And then figuring out, okay, where are the guidelines and the boundaries for your family? It's going to look a little bit different for every family, depending on your own familiarity with technology, depending on your kids' ages, depending on just a lot of different things, their kids' maturities, the different things that they're struggling with. Some children are going to be more prone for anxiety and depression and some of those negative things than others who really not as worried about that kind of thing. So it really is in your own family, like what are your rules and guidelines? But really the point of this conversation is just to encourage you to think through these things. It can be really easy to think, oh, everyone's on social media, it's fine, like it's not a big deal. And that of course is what the social media companies want us to think. Obviously they want us to use their product. And I'm not anti-social media in any way, but we want to make sure that we are mindful and we are informed of everything that our kids are getting into or that could potentially be exposed to. We'll never know about all of it, but just getting ridiculously informed and setting those clear boundaries and guidelines in place in advance can do a lot of good. So your next steps for today, if you are saying, yeah, I definitely want to know more about this topic, be sure to check out Chris's book, 5 Habits of the Tech Ready Family, as well as his website, Protect Young Eyes, and then have these conversations. Have conversations with your husband, have conversations with your children, have conversations with your friend. What are people doing? How are they navigating it in their family? And figure out what path do you think is going to work best for you. You may not get it right the first time. You can't protect your kids against everything, but putting in some of that work up front really can save your kids from a world of hurt. And as moms, that's what we want. So hopefully this has been helpful for you, and I will see you again here next week. All right, bye.